for this speaker, but our next talk we'll move right into is Lynne Trollope and colleagues, who will be talking on the subject of open-ended fire breaks, new technology for creating extensive fire breaks in challenging landscapes. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see if we can get you set up here. And
3, there we go.
great. And let's see. There we go.
Perfect, thank you. Good afternoon, folks. My name is not Lynne Trollope. Unfortunately, Lynn has come down with some flu, so she's sick in bed, and you've got me again today. And I'm going to try and do her justice. This paper was written by Lynn and Winston and Bob and Ross, and it's culminated over probably 3 years in a South African environment. Let's see where it is. Open-ended fire breaks. What are we talking about? As you know, working on fire has got global presence all over the world and all different things. And what I actually said yesterday, there are so many commonalities between those continents that are on there. And there are some continents that never ever had fire. They had a landscape that was fireproof. For example, closed canopy primary forests in the Indonesian swamps. They could not burn. It was physically impossible. Change the landscape and see what happens next. Because now suddenly it's a fire-adapted environment, or fire-adapted fuels in an environment that's never ever seen fires before. And I found Christina's presentation incredibly interesting because it proves that Europe is also actually fire-adapted. We tend to think too short. We can't remember far back. And it's critically important that we look at the records of the old history, because maybe what we're doing now is learning the same lessons that happened 300 years ago. Maybe. We all know that Africa is known as the fire continent, terra de feu. We know the first explorers that came past looked at Africa and said, this whole place burns all the time. We've got archaeological records that show that we've had some fires that have burned for years, as in they go up a mountain and they slow down, and then they go down a mountain and then they speed up the other side, and they carry on for years and years as they go. Totally fire adapted. And a lot of the fire adaptation and the adaptive climate that we have is now happening in other places all over the world. You have good fires and bad fires. We all know that. And it's not just high intensity fires or low intensity fires. It's the wildfires, the unplanned events, the ones where people get in the way that are hurting us the most. Between 2002 and 2015, 2.3 to 4.6 million hectares are burnt every year by wildfire. Now, are those all bad fires? Some of them not. But the moment there are people involved and there are people in the way, and there's catastrophic loss of commercial quantum, then it is not a good thing. And we're going to talk about today doing fire breaks to stop this sort of thing happening. Because this is unacceptable. This cannot be normal. It cannot be okay. The fire culture, we've got grassland that needs to burn. We've got endemic species of fynbos and trees and grasses that are absolutely fire dependent. They will die if they are not burnt. The trick is getting those fuels and the commercial fuels, our alien fuels, our introduced commercial plants, putting those two together and working out what to burn, where to burn, what to exclude on the burning pattern, and what to include. We all know in this room that weather does not make fires. We know that. But sometimes the public doesn't. They think the weather just magically makes these fires pop up. So we know that the cause of fires is people. In South Africa, 95 to 98% of our fires are human caused, for whatever reason. And some of them are quite interesting reasons, and we'll go through that just now. But the weather is the thing that takes the fire to where it's going to go. What are we going to do in between with the fuel? And we have a Bergwind scenario, very similar to your Fogony, if that's the right word, where you got high altitude winds, downslope, warming up, humidity drops. gets very hot, and that is our peak fire condition. We use a fire danger index, and we use this as we get into the sciences of how we do prescribed burning and how we do fire breaks, especially the open-ended fire breaks. It's a pretty generic system. Blue, it's nice and safe. Green, it starts warming up. Yellow, orange, and then red. Red being the most catastrophic fire weather. Doesn't make the fires, but it certainly pushes the fires to where they're going to end up. So we had to find a way of making cost-effective fire breaks. For interest's sake, we've got a Wildfire Act that says every landowner on whose land a fire may start or spread from must have a fire break. It's not the government, it's the landowner. So, okay, every landowner must have a fire break. A fire break must be long enough and wide enough to reasonably prevent a fire from crossing it. Okay, that's pretty simple. It must be reasonably clear of combustible material, and it must not cause erosion. That's what our Act says about fire breaks. But what about a community or a landscape where there's not very much money and they can't afford to do a formal fire break like we are used to, where you're clearing it by hand or by chemical or by fire? What are the solutions? What are the alternatives to expensive operations? We've got a research and development division, and we built on an Australian system called the open-ended fire break, OEFB. And it's worked very well for us, and it's a very easily transferable system to other environments as well. The concept is, and this is the practical stuff, is that there's fire applied to partially cured grass fields. Partially cured. They must not be fully cured. It happens during late summer. Remember that we are in the southern hemisphere, so everything's backwards. It's a continuous ignition line in the late afternoon, early evening. Those of you that were in yesterday will know about the humidity rising, temperature dropping. We're looking for that cross. Because what you can do is that by careful timing and by monitoring the curing, you can manipulate the fire and you can make it go out all by itself by just using the right conditions. Because what we are looking for is the decreasing in temperature, because it does happen every night, it decreases, and the humidity spike as it goes through. And we try and gauge it for about 5 minutes, 3 to 4 hours before the fire starts. So this is what it looks like. On the top left, you've got the classic fire break, where you have two teams, one on the left flank, one on the right flank. You start into wind, and you then burn it out, as in backburn fire, and then you put the fire in upwind, and they meet in the middle, everything's fine. Expensive, time-consuming, takes a lot of time. The other one is the open-ended fire break, where you put a fire in at the right time of day, as a head fire or a backing fire, and you let nature put it out. And nature does put it out. That's what it looks like. We're looking for fuel loads of not more than 4,000 kgs per hectare. Grass curing between 30 and 40%. And we're looking at about 2-year-old fuel, because any younger, there's not enough fuel to actually carry it properly. We're looking for temperatures below 25 degrees, critical. Relative humidity, 50% and rising. It mustn't be dropping. Wind speed, less than 8 kilometers an hour. We need some wind to get it to drive. No wind doesn't work. We can't get the fire to carry. And a fire danger index of less than 25. So you are in the safe weather condition pattern. And obviously it's late summer or early autumn, and February, April, obviously that'll be opposite for here. We had some very successful large-scale burns on our boundary between South Africa and Mozambique in the Kruger National Park. That's what it looks like. And you literally put a fire in next to that road and you leave it. And you just watch it. And it just burns, and it just starts going down. And it's out. Done deal. It's like magic. That's doing it by hand. And we use it for game ranches, and Yesterday I was showing you that large fire break on top of the Lesotho Mountains. Let me get to the pictures. Bang, bang, bang. I'm running out of time. There we go. We used aerial ignition because of the remoteness of the area, and those are the criteria that we had. It was 1410 when we started. Temperature was 11.3. It was quite a high altitude burn. It was sitting at over 1,000 meters. The fire was dead by 2300 hours, where the temperature was minus 4.8. We had frost, and humidity did not go as high as we hoped, but the cold fixed it, and we had light winds. And that's what it looks like. You're burning basically on top of mountains, and that's the map of it. That's what it looks like. If you look into the far background, it was 66 or 64 kilometers burning along the top, all by itself. It worked very well, and it is a strategic buffer between Lesotho and South Africa, and it critically protects a lot of rural communities that have got no firefighting capacity, very high risk. What we did find out of it, the research finding, is that the moment you start getting into altitude burning, it's a slightly different science than to low level burning. For example, on the lower, warmer altitudes, relative humidity was the controlling factor of making the fire die down. At the higher altitudes, humidity actually dropped, because obviously the higher you go, the humidity drops as well. There it was purely temperature. So we had two different scenarios, two different worlds, same result, with different factors making that result. This year, we're planning to burn 100 kilometers on those sort of mountains. Over the top, we're just going to go with a helicopter, and that should take us 4 or 5 hours for 100 kilometers. It is a very economical way of doing fire breaks, and we firmly believe that it can be carried across into the Mediterranean climates, which we are using in the Western Cape, and obviously in southern France, Spain, Portugal. I think there is maybe a place where this can work, with the right climate and the right fuels and the right application. Gracias.